You're lagging on my end, and I was lagging on your end. Let me see. I'm Greg Beck, screenwriter primarily. I've been writing for about 15 years. I've been working professionally fairly consistently for the last 3 years.
I'm Josh. I'm not mainly a screenwriter, but I've always enjoyed it. Most of my experience is in writing short films. I wrote almost every short project that we worked on in college, but that's a much smaller bite than writing something like a feature. I'm not totally experienced in writing longer form stories, but I'm always intrigued and wishing I could, so that's why I'm grouping myself in here.
My name's Lewis. I've been technically writing since I was a kid. I started writing a book when I was 11, and I've never worked professionally, but I'm still writing, also working on directing and editing as far as being a filmmaker goes, but anything to do with storytelling, man, I'm there. When you're looking to write a script, what are the main points that you start with when you're putting a story down?
For me personally, it depends on...
It's crazy.
It's happening again.
Yeah, you're...
Oh my god. Hey Greg, can you hear me? Everything you're saying is not coming through. Going off some of the story structure points that we studied in school, I know that in stories that we make and in stories that we love the most, we like those being bent a little bit. Sometimes we want staccato, we want force, and we want a shocking sort of a shift. But whatever that case may be, Lewis, what would you say? Would you split it into 5 parts?
So for me, the 5 main points are your inciting incident, your Act 1 curtain, your midpoint, your Act 2 curtain, and your climax. Knowing that a character should be different from the beginning to the end, you know that wherever they start is not where they're going to end. And then knowing more specifically that the midpoint is this transitionary period moving from untruth to truth, moving from disorder to order. When I'm developing a story, my midpoint is kind of my litmus or my Rosetta Stone for knowing how the rest of the story is going to be. Finally, our character is being motivated to take more control over their journey. They've been participating through the whole first act and the beginning of the second act, but now their understanding of their journey is a little bit more focused. Think about Sunshine from Danny Boyle. The mission is to restart the sun, but their deeper mission is to save humanity, right? And then the midpoint is realizing that the Icarus One is still there. So with that midpoint, you have now this understanding of, okay, well, if we're meant to save humanity, aren't we doubling our chances if we take the risk to get their payload as well? There's this transition of understanding of what the journey is, and now they have to take a different sort of action. So for me, the midpoint is completely essential. As soon as I know what that transition is, I know more accurately where the story's beginning, where my character's beginning, and where they're going to end. From there, it's this process of kind of getting lost in this whirlpool of mixing techniques and mixing emotions and trying to coherently pull your character from one point to the other while still keeping them in charge of their journey. And it's a very difficult process. Yeah, those are the 5 main things for me.
For me, it is grabbing them at the beginning, and then you get very staccato kind of stuff where okay, nothing's happening, something's happening, nothing's happening, something's happening, and then the right thing is usually how I go with it. That happens, and you kind of work your way down. It's okay, everything's going normal again, and all of a sudden, big shock happens. That's usually what I've always try to go with.
Kind of set up those peaks, like Greg was talking about. You have these moments that will shock your audience into going, oh, what's going to happen next? It's easier for me to follow the structure when it's those 5 points.
Once you have those kind of peaks, the audience will then stay with you throughout it.
For this exercise, I'd like you, Greg, and Lewis to go back and forth. I would like, Greg, for you to start with the exposition, the introduction, the setting, maybe the character, whatever.
Up to the inciting incident. Give us the inciting incident, and then I'll take it from there.
So it'll start with you, Greg, and it'll end with you this round. I'd like you guys to create one story right here. In tune of what we're saying, how we like, unpredictability and different things in stories that we enjoy, and we like to twist the narrative in ways that are maybe unexpected. I think this would be an interesting exercise to create one story. You know, we may never use it, but it'll be something, and it'll surprise us all. So
How the sausage gets made.
yeah. So Greg, take your time and maybe give yourself like a minute or two if you need.
Interior apartment, bathroom, night. A woman sits at the mirror, basically. She has a bloody lip and black eye. Her boyfriend does something, leaves and walks out of the apartment, and then she walks outside. But the inciting incident would basically be she is with this guy who's been watching what's been going on. He doesn't say he will kill him or anything, but he gives a hint of what she should do.
Okay. Why don't we make it muddled?
Wait, what?
Well, let's make it muddled. She understands the options that this other guy kind of gave her slide.
Actually, let's not make it a guy. Let's make it a woman.
Okay. So this woman gave our main character the option. If you want this to be off your plate, then we can do that. Let's say she messes up in her wording. She debates this topic. Maybe she talks to her friend, or she goes out in public and she sees something that just starts in her this process of thinking, can I let this go on, and what's the value of stopping it? She goes back to this woman who's given her these options and she says, just make him go away. We'll know that our main character doesn't mean to kill him, but just to give him enough of a scare that he won't do this again. This exterior female character would say, all right, I understand, but it's a misunderstanding. She's going to kill him. And now at the Act 1 curtain, after seeing this dude's dead body, our main character has to go back to this woman and say, I didn't want him dead. And she says, well, that's too bad, because now he's dead and you owe me. So that's our break into two.
The man ends up dead and she says, I didn't want this. And the woman says, well, you know what? Too bad. Forcing yourself to adapt to where the story just went, what would you do next?
I would say she's almost dealing with the guilt of it and everything, but this woman keeps reminding her, listen, he did all this stuff, he was abusive towards you, he brutalized you and everything. Why do you feel any guilt over this? She's kind of basically trying to almost make her feel listen, murder is justified at times.
So what I'm hearing is we have two different worldviews. One character says, if we kill and it's justified, it's fine. The other character says, taking life is bad. I wanted him to learn a lesson. I didn't want the chance for him to become a better person taken away from him.
So the new point of contention would be the worldview between the woman who's done the killing now.
It'd be an ideological battle, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a largely ideological battle between both of them, probably for most of it.
Well, Greg, take us to the midpoint of that story. What is the point where our main character then says to herself, well, I'm done playing this game, or what changes in her in between the beginning of Act 2 to the midpoint? What would change in her character that would bring her to a point of kind of self-actualization?
I'd say it almost has to be something akin to where at that point the woman's almost this ideological battle and everything. At first it comes to, you know what, you're right, and they start working together to help other people who are abused.
Boondock Saints for women.
Yeah, almost that and everything, and it would lead, but not so much Boondock Saints. I would say it's more almost imagine strangers on a train, but if they were on the same terms.
So,
or what was it? There was this English film years ago called Outlaw that dealt with something similar. It was Sean Bean and Bob Hoss and Danny Dyer. It became at a certain point where it's okay, we're no longer just killing one person. It's now with us, everybody who we're going after is deserving of this. But it's who are we to make these decisions? Who are we to be judge, jury, and executioner?
So what is the midpoint then? What is that moment?
My feeling is that they would do this to someone who is young. If they did this to a teenager, probably. They did this to a teenage boy or something.
Okay, I'm going to take over from there. So let's say that our main character is the one that instigated that the midpoint was her saying, all right, if you're not going to help me with this, then I'll do it myself, and brings the problem back to the woman who kind of started her on this journey in the first place. Now it's our main character telling this other woman, you're in this with me. You can't bail. You can't blame it on me or make me a scapegoat. You brought me into this world. I've accepted it so fully that it scares you. So from the midpoint to the break into 3 would be kind of that fall falling out where the boss lady, I guess I'll just call her, turns all of her resources against our protagonist, and now our protagonist at the beginning of the third act is saying, it's okay, I'll operate on my own, I'll be my own judge, jury, and executioner. And I guess the climax would be naturally that the two of them come into some sort of showdown or meet at a moment where they have to understand one another.
Maybe a backstory behind why they kind of shift was maybe the person who's initially the killer, who's initially doing these things, hasn't really actually felt personal effects of violence on their own life so much. The person that we start off with, she's clearly a victim in some way and has experienced that and is maybe more hesitant because she feels that effect. But when this other woman now introduces her to this idea that it's okay to be violent, for some reasons, then maybe she, kind of loses control because she's starting from more of an unstable place. In that regard, the woman who was initially doing the thing that we were questioning, she's not really had so much of that personal effect on herself. This doesn't totally remind me of this, but Monster, have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
I'd recommend that. Not totally the same at all, but
It strikes me that this boss lady, she has rules. She has guidelines. She won't let herself go too far. This is more of a business for her than it is a personal vendetta. And now we introduce someone who gets highly emotional with it and has her own experience to strike back.
This is the difference between someone who's a career criminal and someone who, using the monster as an example, like Eileen Wuornos, or someone who had suffered kind of the abuse Eileen Wuornos suffered, then met someone who was like Gina Gershon's character from Bound almost.
I like that. Let's keep moving the story to the conclusion so we can wrap this one up. I like how this is going though.
My only thought before Greg take it to our climax, my only thought is that the main emotional journey of our main character is being kind of toxified by the thought of a vendetta. And that the event that catalyzed this isn't anything in her past. That's something that kind of annoys me with modern movies, is everything has to have a traumatic backstory. People don't always have traumatic backstories in their life. Sometimes they just have a misunderstanding about life that gets kind of amplified as they live. So this may be one of those things for her where she's been in abusive situations before, but they haven't been entirely insane, like a boyfriend beating her up or someone telling her you have to do this or the consequences are dire. So it seems to me that simply this woman kind of snapped almost, and that the event that started the snapping was this guy has beaten her up. Do we know if it's again? That's something we can develop later, but I guess I just wanted to say that this isn't about some childhood story of hers. It's simply this guy took it too far, and now she got mixed up on a slippery slope that she never caught her footing on, and now she's way over her head and kind of loving it.
She's enjoying finally this idea of power, and the ultimate kind of power for any human being probably would be the ability to inflict pain on somebody.
That's a great thing in Dune. Paul Muad'Dib, he's the heir to the throne, but he gets dethroned because his father was killed and he has to go running. There's one point where he's trying to talk to these people and tell them the logic behind the power that he thinks they have. And they're saying, Paul, how can we fight such a massive army? And he says, you forget we have the one thing they need. And true power comes from the ability to destroy that thing. It isn't in owning it. It isn't in being strategic. It's in the ability to take it away from people who need it. So that's what I'm hearing kind of right here. Yeah, maybe is it the freedom that our character feels? It's not the power, but it's the freedom to have the power and to throw off all these things that she felt was holding her back.
My feeling is almost like, I don't want to have it very moralistic. They both went down at the end, or one of them went down and one of them ran off. Our protagonist is able to construct a way for everything to fall back on the other woman. The other woman then has to completely absolve both of them. Our protagonist basically has almost like a Tom Ripley type thing where they're off basically to just destroy destroy more lives.
Almost like side effects if it was kind of reversed, that ending. I like that. That could actually be a really, really good story.
Yeah.
It's a perfect reversal too, I think, because The first moment where our character takes a complicit part in her journey is saying, I want you to do something about this. And then we come back around and now it's flipped. She's telling who was kind of the boss lady, as I've termed it. Now the boss lady is the one who has to say either I'm going down this road or I'm not. And then we see a Thelma Louise kind of ending where it's like, yeah, we'll do this. We'll go down this road. We don't have to see them jump off a cliff for it, but we see them like, well, this spells out like a lot of more kind of gritty, violent adventures between these two. Maybe it's like James Bond. It's these two females, like almost like hitmen.
It's really almost like what the end of Hannibal was supposed to be in the book, where Lecter and Clarice go off together.
Right.
Yeah, or Talented Mr. Ripley type thing, where the character basically doesn't pay the consequences for their actions.
American Hustle was kind of a little similar. The bad guys kind of get away with it.
I wonder if there's any way to loop back in the initial point of conflict between them, which is that the protagonist wants the guy to live, but just to be shaken up or whatever, and not to be killed. And maybe part of an attempt for her to pin something on to the other woman is to not kill someone, to leave them alive as she initially wanted, you know. But to play around maybe with the idea of maybe somehow she does coerce this other woman to now leave their victims alive, but that's a much darker ending for the victims than just being killed, just being left somewhere like in a cage or in a whatever.
Yeah, well, think about in 6 Feet Under, that one night where David gets kind of kidnapped by that guy he picked up on the side of the road. And that whole night, David is going through this terrible, terrible journey of possibly being burned alive, possibly being shot, and then he gets tricked into like, oh, we're gonna do a good thing, we're gonna go get my dog, and it just takes this huge left turn. I could see these characters doing something like that where it's really disturbing and kind of sociopathic, and there are things worse than death.
If you want kind of a twisted bookend, you could have, the ending shot or near, right before the ending shot, near the ending scene, it could be a victim with a black eye in a
bloody
room.
lip.
Yeah, and a bloody lip.
Oh, they should create their own nemesis in the same way that our protagonist was created into this kind of awful thing. They don't realize that they're sowing the same seeds of destruction that brought them to this journey.
Yeah, it almost paints the image of like, well, you didn't want this guy to be dead, but look what happens when you hurt someone and you don't take their life.
I think a great thing to have would probably be around the all is lost moment, is that they do that to somebody and that person actually is a saint, is somebody who can say, I'll forgive you. You don't understand the pain you're causing. You don't realize kind of the gravity of your actions.
What if it was the person who literally they're going after in one case? Like, it is someone who is completely made to look like they're a bad person.
My first thought is the boyfriend from the beginning. Maybe we don't actually understand what happened.
Honestly, I see ways that this could be like a good 4 or 5 episode thing too.
Yeah.
I'm liking where it's going. So I think that's enough for right now to kind of establish a sort of story. I'm happy with how that turned out. All right, well, I think that's it.
All right, cool. Later.
Later. We didn't have any issues in the past 30 minutes now.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
So
I think because I switched to the 5G network. I think that's helped.
I think so too.
I think so.
On my
So
family's 5G network, it helped.
On your way out, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting. We love hearing from you, and we want to know what you'd like to see.